Imagine betraying someone who feels everything you think, sees everything you hide, and realizing you can never come back from it. Because when a narcissist crosses a super empath, it's not just a broken heart, it's a collapse of their very identity, and the consequences are permanent. If you've ever dealt with someone who manipulates, deceives, or betrays, hit subscribe and learn how to protect your energy and reclaim power. This isn't just survival, it's about seeing the truth behind their psychology. When a narcissist interacts with a super empath, they are unknowingly facing someone with extraordinary emotional perception. Super empaths possess an intuitive ability to sense not only feelings, but also hidden motives, subtle shifts in energy, and unspoken intentions. They can detect dishonesty, manipulation, or insincerity long before it becomes apparent to others. This heightened sensitivity means that when a narcissist betrays them, the act cannot go unnoticed or unprocessed. The empath immediately perceives the discrepancy between words and actions, the gap between promises and behavior. This emotional insight exposes the narcissist in a way they are unprepared for. While they may have successfully deceived others with charm or projection, a super empath sees through the facade. They recognize patterns, motives, and manipulations that a typical person might overlook. Their awareness is not about judgment or revenge. It is about understanding and protecting themselves. This perception leaves the narcissist vulnerable because the usual mechanisms they rely on, emotional manipulation, gaslighting, or controlling reactions, are ineffective. Moreover, the exposure of their behavior threatens the narcissist's sense of invulnerability. They are accustomed to admiration, compliance, and a level of control that reinforces their self-image. When a super empath sees through them, that control disappears, and the narcissist experiences destabilization. The empath's awareness, combined with their ability to disengage while maintaining clarity, ensures that the narcissist cannot easily repair the damage. This makes the betrayal not just a relational misstep, but a profound psychological rupture that the narcissist cannot easily recover from, leaving lasting consequences for their sense of power and identity. When a narcissist betrays a super empath, it often triggers a profound narcissistic injury that shakes the very core of their self-image. Unlike ordinary relationships, where the narcissist can rely on blind admiration or unquestioning validation, the super empath sees through the facade. They recognize the betrayal for what it is, a violation of trust and an exposure of the narcissist's manipulative tendencies. This recognition is experienced as a mirror held up to the narcissist's true self, revealing their flaws, insecurities, and moral shortcomings in stark detail. The narcissistic injury that results is more than simple embarrassment or guilt. It is a blow to their identity. Narcissists construct their sense of self through external validation, control, and the perception that they are superior or untouchable. When a super empath perceives the betrayal and withdraws, that illusion collapses. The narcissist is confronted with the fact that they are not as powerful, admired, or untouchable as they believed. This type of injury is especially destabilizing because it cannot easily be repaired. Apologies, charm, or attempts at manipulation often fail against a super empath who enforces clear boundaries and does not provide the emotional fuel the narcissist depends on. Without that validation, the narcissist experiences insecurity, agitation, and a sense of loss that they are ill-equipped to process. In essence, betraying a super empath strikes at the narcissist's identity itself. The combination of exposure, withdrawal of validation, and unyielding boundaries creates a psychological rupture from which they cannot fully recover, leaving long-lasting consequences for their ego and sense of control. When a narcissist betrays a super empath, they instantly lose the leverage they once relied on: control. Narcissists thrive on influencing others, shaping emotions, and steering reactions to reinforce their sense of superiority. With most people, subtle manipulation or charm is enough to maintain dominance, but super empaths operate differently. They are deeply attuned to intentions, motives, and hidden agendas, and they recognize manipulation the moment it occurs. When a betrayal happens, the empath withdraws their emotional investment and refuses to engage in the power dynamic the narcissist depends on. This withdrawal is devastating to the narcissist because their influence is not just diminished, it disappears entirely. No charm, apology, or grand gesture can reinstate the control they once held. The empath's boundaries are clear and unyielding, leaving the narcissist with no access to the admiration, attention, or validation that sustains their ego. This absence creates a psychological void, disrupting the narcissist's sense of dominance and exposing their vulnerability in ways they rarely encounter. Unlike ordinary relationships, where a narcissist can manipulate emotions to restore equilibrium, the super empath's awareness and steadfast detachment prevent this recovery. The narcissist is forced to confront the limits of their power and the reality that their usual strategies no longer work. Losing control to a super empath is not a minor setback. It is a profound disruption of the narcissist's identity and self-concept. Without the ability to manipulate or dominate, they experience insecurity, agitation, and an unsettling loss of authority, making recovery from the betrayal virtually impossible. When a narcissist betrays a super empath, any sense of guilt or regret they feel is usually superficial because their ego prevents true reflection. Narcissists are not naturally wired to engage in deep moral introspection. Their primary focus is self-preservation and maintaining a sense of superiority. When they cross a super empath, they may briefly experience discomfort or shame, but these emotions are often filtered through defensiveness or rationalization rather than genuine accountability. Super empaths, with their heightened emotional insight, can see through these rationalizations. They recognize when remorse is performative or strategic rather than authentic. For the narcissist, this is destabilizing. They cannot use false apologies, charm, or manipulation to regain trust in the same way they might with less perceptive individuals. Their usual mechanisms for repairing relationships, promises, flattery, or gaslighting, fail because the super empath detects the dissonance between words and true intentions. The narcissist's inability to genuinely reflect exacerbates the consequences of their betrayal. They are confronted with the permanence of the loss and the collapse of the validation they once relied on. The gap between their desire to regain control and their inability to authentically reconcile creates internal tension and frustration. Their ego cannot process the reality that some actions have irreversible effects, especially when the empath's boundaries remain firm. In essence, superficial guilt cannot substitute for true accountability. The narcissist may feel discomfort, but without authentic reflection and self-awareness, they remain incapable of repairing the breach. The betrayal leaves a permanent psychological mark, emphasizing that the loss of a super empath is not merely relational. It is an enduring blow to their sense of identity and control. When a narcissist loses the admiration of a super empath, it destabilizes their sense of identity and self-worth in a way they are rarely prepared for. Narcissists construct their self-image around external validation, attention, and the perception that they are exceptional, powerful, or indispensable. Super empaths, with their emotional insight, can see past the facade and detect betrayal immediately. When they withdraw admiration and emotional energy after being betrayed, the narcissist experiences a sudden and profound void. This loss is more than relational. It strikes at the core of who they believe themselves to be. Without constant reinforcement, the inflated sense of self that the narcissist relies on begins to crumble. They may attempt to recover this validation through charm, manipulation, or apologies, but the super empath's boundaries and clarity prevent these tactics from succeeding. The admiration they once counted on is no longer accessible, leaving them exposed and ungrounded. The destabilization affects both self-perception and behavior. The narcissist may become anxious, irritable, or obsessive as they grapple with the unexpected reality that they are no longer the center of someone's emotional world. Their usual sense of invincibility and control is undermined, revealing vulnerability they seldom confront. Ultimately, the loss of admiration from a super empath is irrecoverable because it is tied not to simple attention, but to profound emotional recognition and insight. Without that validation, the narcissist cannot restore the same sense of dominance or self-worth, leaving lasting consequences that cannot be undone. The emotional depth they have forfeited cannot be replicated, making the betrayal a permanent rupture in their perception of themselves. When a narcissist attempts to manipulate or repair a relationship after betraying a super empath, their efforts almost always fail because the empath enforces unbreakable boundaries. Unlike typical partners who may be swayed by charm, apologies, or dramatic gestures, a super empath has both emotional insight and clarity that prevent them from being manipulated. They recognize when attempts at reconciliation are strategic rather than sincere, and they refuse to re-engage in dynamics that compromise their emotional well-being. This unyielding stance creates a barrier the narcissist cannot penetrate. Every effort to charm, guilt, or pressure the empath into forgiving or returning to the relationship is met with awareness and resistance. The empath's boundaries are not negotiable. They are a reflection of self-respect, insight, and an understanding of their own value. The narcissist quickly realizes that their usual tools of control, gaslighting, love bombing, or appeals to nostalgia, are ineffective. Because the narcissist depends on influence over others to sustain their ego and identity, the inability to manipulate the super empath triggers frustration, anxiety, and a destabilizing loss of control. Unlike typical relationships, where patterns can be reset or restored, the empath's emotional and psychological autonomy makes reconciliation impossible unless the narcissist undergoes profound self-reflection, a capacity they rarely possess. In essence, the super empath's unbreakable boundaries act as a final safeguard. They prevent the narcissist from reclaiming influence, ensuring the betrayal has lasting consequences. No apology, no strategy, and no manipulation can undo the clear-eyed perception and steadfast limits that protect the empath, leaving the narcissist powerless to repair what has been lost. The narcissist cannot replicate the depth of empathy lost when betraying a super empath, and this is a key reason why recovery is impossible. Super empaths possess an extraordinary ability to understand, feel, and respond to emotional subtleties that most people cannot perceive. They mirror emotions, detect intentions, and provide insight into the dynamics of the relationship in a way that nourishes connection while maintaining clarity. This level of emotional attunement is unique and cannot be easily replaced or duplicated. When a narcissist betrays such a person, they lose more than just a partner or an ally. They lose an irreplaceable source of emotional insight and understanding. Any attempts to recreate this bond with someone else fail because the empath's combination of perceptiveness, boundaries, and emotional intelligence is singular. The narcissist may find admiration or attention elsewhere, but the depth of connection and insight provided by the super empath is unobtainable. This irreproducibility compounds the narcissistic injury. The narcissist is forced to confront the fact that their usual strategies, charm, manipulation, or deceit, cannot restore the same dynamic. They experience a unique sense of loss that cannot be mitigated through substitutes. No other relationship provides the same mirror into their behavior, the same clarity about consequences, or the same capacity for seeing them as they truly are. In short, the super empath's emotional depth is irreplaceable, and their absence leaves a permanent void. The narcissist cannot recover what they have destroyed, making the betrayal a defining rupture in their life. This inability to replicate the lost connection ensures that the consequences of betrayal are enduring and psychologically destabilizing. The emotional impact of betraying a super empath creates consequences for a narcissist that are irreversible, particularly because it undermines their sense of dominance and control. Narcissists thrive on influence, attention, and the ability to manipulate others to reinforce their self-image. A super empath disrupts this dynamic completely. When they recognize betrayal and withdraw, the narcissist loses not only the admiration and emotional fuel they relied on, but also the sense that they are untouchable. This loss cannot be compensated with charm, manipulation, or replacement relationships. The empath's withdrawal exposes the narcissist's vulnerabilities in ways they are unaccustomed to confronting. They experience a destabilizing blow to their ego because the mechanisms that normally protect their self-concept, obedience, admiration, or compliance from others, are no longer available. Attempts to reassert control or reclaim influence fail, as the super empath's clear boundaries and emotional insight prevent re-engagement on the narcissist's terms. Additionally, the narcissist is forced to face the permanence of their actions. Unlike ordinary betrayals, which can sometimes be smoothed over with apologies or superficial reconciliation, the depth of understanding and awareness that a super empath brings makes restoration impossible. They cannot replicate the unique combination of empathy, perception, and discernment they have lost. In essence, the betrayal leaves a lasting psychological mark. The narcissist is confronted with the fact that some losses are absolute, and their usual strategies for regaining control are powerless. The emotional and strategic clarity of the super empath ensures that the consequences of betrayal are permanent, fundamentally disrupting the narcissist's identity, influence, and sense of superiority. Betraying a super empath is a mistake a narcissist can never fully recover from, and the reason lies in the unique qualities that set these individuals apart. Super empaths possess extraordinary emotional insight and intuition, able to detect deception, manipulation, and hidden motives long before others notice. When a narcissist crosses this boundary, the betrayal is immediately recognized, and the empath responds with clarity, detachment, and unbreakable boundaries. This response deprives the narcissist of the admiration, validation, and control that sustain their ego, leaving a void they are ill-equipped to fill. The consequences of this betrayal extend beyond the relational. Narcissists rely on influence and emotional fuel to reinforce their sense of self. Losing a super empath removes the mirror through which they gauge power, worth, and dominance. Unlike ordinary partners, a super empath cannot be manipulated back into compliance. Their emotional depth and awareness make superficial apologies or charm ineffective. Guilt or regret, if it appears, is filtered through the narcissist's ego and rarely results in genuine reflection, meaning the damage is permanent. Furthermore, the narcissist cannot replicate the depth of empathy lost. No other relationship can provide the same insight, attunement, or clarity. Attempts to regain control or validation elsewhere are inadequate because the connection they destroyed was irreplaceable. The combination of exposure, withdrawal, and steadfast boundaries ensures that the narcissist is confronted with a reality they cannot manipulate or reverse. Some losses are absolute. Ultimately, the betrayal of a super empath disrupts the narcissist's identity, self-concept, and sense of dominance in ways that are enduring. It leaves them psychologically destabilized, unable to restore what was lost, and forced to face the limits of their power. The super empath's clarity, boundaries, and emotional depth create consequences that are permanent, making this type of loss an indelible turning point in a narcissist's life.